Loyalty in business is a two-way street. When Blake Thompson landed the biggest client in his company's history, a $10 million account that would transform the small marketing agency into a major player, he expected recognition, not betrayal. Instead, his boss, Marcus Reed, quietly changed the commission structure and pocketed most of the windfall himself. What happened next wasn't just business. It was justice served cold. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. 7 years ago, I was working for Reed Marketing Solutions, a mid-sized digital marketing agency in Chicago. The company had about 40 employees and was doing okay, not setting the world on fire, but turning a steady profit with mostly local clients. I'd been there for almost 4 years at that point, climbing from junior account manager to senior. Business development specialist, Marcus Reed, the owner and CEO, had built the company from scratch. In the beginning, he was inspirational, always talking about how we were a family, how he valued loyalty above all else, and how the company's success would be shared. The commission structure was pretty generous, 15% on all new business you brought in, plus 5% on renewals. It was one of the main reasons I stuck around despite a couple of decent offers from larger agencies. Our biggest client at the time was bringing in around $750,000 annually. Nothing to sneeze at, but nowhere near industry leading. Marcus had been talking for years about landing a whale, one of those game-changing clients that would put Reed Marketing on the map. Every Monday morning meeting, he'd remind us, "We need that 8-figure client. That's when everything changes for all of us." I took those words to heart. I networked like crazy, attended every industry event I could, and started targeting bigger fish. Most of my colleagues were content with the smaller, more accessible clients, but I had my sights set higher. Then I met Vanessa Blackwell at a charity gala in downtown Chicago. She wasn't just another executive. She was the newly appointed chief marketing officer at Horizon Innovations, a rapidly expanding tech company that had recently received massive venture capital funding. Everyone in our industry knew they were preparing for a major market push and looking to completely overhaul their marketing strategy. "You know what's funny?" Vanessa said after I introduced myself. "I've been meeting with all these huge agencies from New York and LA, and they all talk the same game. Big promises, fancy presentations, but no one's really listening to what we need." I saw my opening and took it. Maybe that's because they're too big to really care about what makes your company unique. They have their templates, their one-size-fits-all approaches. Smaller agencies like ours have to actually listen and adapt, she laughed. "Bold of you to call out your competition like that." "It's not bold if it's true," I replied. We ended up talking for over an hour. Instead of giving her a rehearsed pitch, I asked questions. What was Horizon's biggest marketing challenge? What had previous agencies failed to deliver? What would success look like in 1 year? 5 years? By the end of the night, she handed me her card. "Send me a proposal. Not something generic. I want to see that you actually heard what I said tonight." I didn't sleep that weekend. I researched everything about Horizon Innovations, their competitors, their market position. I built a custom proposal that addressed every single point Vanessa had raised. When I finally emailed it to her on Sunday night, it was nearly 40 pages of detailed, tailored strategies. Monday morning, I was still running on fumes when my phone rang. It was Vanessa. "Blake, this is exactly what I was talking about. You actually listened. That's what we do," I said, heart pounding. "I'd like you to present this to our executive team on Wednesday. Can you do that?" 2 days later, I was standing in Horizon's gleaming headquarters, presenting to their 7-person executive team. Marcus came with me, of course. I'd told him about the potential client immediately, and he'd been ecstatic, if a bit skeptical, that we could actually land them. The presentation went perfectly. I'd prepared for every possible question, and when Marcus saw how well the executives were responding, he smoothly jumped in to emphasize our agency's strengths. We made a good team that day. As we were leaving, Vanessa walked us to the elevator. Yadim Biot, team was impressed, she said. Especially with your understanding of our market challenges. We're still meeting with 2 other agencies, but I wanted you to know you've set the bar very high. Marcus could barely contain himself in the cab ride back to our office. Do you know what this would mean for us? He kept saying. This would be transformative. When we land this, everything changes. For the next 2 weeks, I was in constant contact with Vanessa, answering follow-up questions, providing additional details, and gently reinforcing why we were the right choice despite our smaller size. I must have exchanged 100 emails with her, often responding late at night or early in the morning. Then came the call I'll never forget. Blake, Vanessa said, I'm calling to let you know that we've made our decision. We'd like to move forward with Reed Marketing. I nearly dropped the phone. That's incredible news, Vanessa. Thank you for putting your trust in us. Thank yourself. Your proposal and follow-through made this decision easy. We're looking at a minimum 3-year engagement. Our legal team will send over the contract this afternoon. When I told Marcus, he actually hugged me, something he'd never done before. The entire office erupted in celebration when he announced it. Horizon Innovations would be paying $3.3 million annually for a comprehensive marketing overhaul and ongoing management. A $10 million client over the initial contract period. This is what happens when you aim high, Marcus shouted over the impromptu champagne toast. Blake showed us what's possible when you refuse to settle. This changes everything for Reed Marketing, and for all of us. That night, I allowed myself to do the math. At my 15% commission rate for new business, the Horizon deal would net me nearly $500,000 in the first year alone. After years of hard work, I was looking at the kind of payday that could fundamentally change my life. I could finally pay off my student loans, put a down payment on a house, maybe even start the small investment fund I'd been dreaming about. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. We had to staff up to handle the Horizon account, creating a dedicated team that I would lead. I worked 16-hour days to ensure the onboarding was flawless. Vanessa and her team were demanding but fair, and the relationship was off to a strong start. A month into the new contract, I realized I hadn't received my commission yet. Typically, these were paid out within 2 weeks of a client signing. I figured it was just an oversight given how busy everyone had been, so I stopped by our finance director's office. Hey, Tanya, just checking on the Horizon commission. I know, things have been crazy around here. Tanya looked uncomfortable. You should talk to Marcus about that. About what? Is there a delay or something? Just talk to Marcus, Blake. That's all I can say. A knot formed in my stomach as I walked to Marcus's office. His assistant wasn't at her desk, but his door was open. He was on the phone, looking out the window at the Chicago skyline. We're in a different league now, absolutely, he was saying. The Horizon deal changed everything. He noticed me and quickly ended his call. Blake, the man of the hour. Come in. I closed the door behind me. Marcus, I stopped by finance to check on the Horizon commission, and Tanya said I should talk to you directly. Something shifted in his expression, so subtle I almost missed it. He gestured for me to sit down. Right, about that. I've been meaning to discuss this with you. He leaned back in his chair. The executive team and I have been reviewing our commission structure. With accounts of this size, the standard rate simply isn't sustainable. I felt like the floor was tilting beneath me. What are you saying? For premium clients, which we're now defining as any account over $1 million annually, we're adjusting the commission to a more industry standard rate of 5% for new business, 2% on renewals. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It's still a very generous compensation package, Blake. You're changing the commission structure retroactively after I've already landed the client? My voice was remarkably steady despite the anger building inside me. Marcus shrugged. The new structure applies to all premium accounts moving forward. The paperwork was finalized last week. He slid a folder across his desk. You'll still receive around $165,000 for the first year. That's a substantial bonus by any measure. I didn't touch the folder. That's not what we agreed to. When I brought in Horizon, the commission rate was 15%. That's the rate I earned. Business realities change, Blake. As we grow, our policies need to mature as well. The company needs to retain more capital for expansion now that we're playing at this level. His tone hardened slightly. I thought you'd be more understanding, considering everything the company has done for you. Everything the company has done for me? I repeated, incredulous. I just brought in a $10 million client. A client that, by your own words, changes everything for Reed Marketing. Marcus's expression cooled. And you're being compensated fairly for that contribution. But let's be clear. You made that sale because of the company's reputation and resources. Don't forget that you're part of a team here, Blake. A team where the rules change after you score the winning point. He sighed heavily, like a disappointed parent. I didn't expect this kind of reaction from you. Perhaps you need some time to process the bigger picture. This new structure benefits everyone in the long run. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I stood up, still leaving the folder untouched on his desk. I'll need to think about this. Of course, Marcus said, his smile returning. But I would appreciate your discretion on this matter. No need to create unnecessary tension in the office while we're all adjusting to our new scale of operations. I turned to leave, he added. By the way, the quarterly leadership retreat is next weekend at Lake Geneva. I'd like you to prepare a presentation on the Horizon onboarding process. Show the team how we'll be handling premium clients moving forward. I nodded stiffly and left without another word. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Marcus's words and calculating the difference, $335,000. That's what he was taking from me with this retroactive policy change. Money I had earned, money I had already mentally allocated, money that represented years of sacrifice and hard work. The next day at the office, I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting. I caught Tanya giving me sympathetic glances. Clearly, she understood what had happened. I wondered how many others knew. Has Marcus pulled similar moves before? During lunch, I met with my friend Nate from the legal department. We'd started at Reed around the same time and occasionally grabbed beers after work. Hypothetically, I asked after making sure we weren't being overheard. If a company changes its commission structure after a sale is made but before the commission is paid, where does that stand legally? Nate didn't even need to think about it. If there's no written contract specifying commission rates, it gets murky. Internal policies can be changed at management's discretion unless they violate labor laws. He studied my face. This isn't hypothetical, is it? I told him everything. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. That's cold, even for Marcus. Unfortunately, without something in writing, you might not have much recourse. He paused. But you do have leverage. What do you mean? You're the primary contact for a $10 million client. A client who specifically wanted to work with you. That's significant leverage if you're willing to use it. I spent the weekend weighing my options. I could accept the reduced commission and keep my head down. I could confront Marcus again and push harder for what I'd earned. I could consult an attorney, though Nate's assessment didn't leave me optimistic about that route, or I could leave. The thought had seemed unthinkable just days earlier. Despite its flaws, Reed Marketing had been my professional home for years. I had friends there, connections, and a track record. Starting over somewhere else meant rebuilding much of that from scratch. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the company culture I'd bought into, The one Marcus had so carefully cultivated with his talk of family and loyalty was just a facade. When it really mattered, when real money was on the table, that facade had crumbled instantly. Monday morning, I requested a meeting with Marcus. This time, his assistant scheduled me for late afternoon. I spent the day quietly organizing my files, backing up my work and making notes about ongoing projects. When it was finally time for my meeting, I felt oddly calm. Marcus was on his computer when I walked in. He held up a finger, asking me to wait while he finished typing something. "Another power move." "Blake," he finally said, leaning back. "Have you had time to process our new commission structure?" "I have," I said, taking a seat. "And I've come to a decision." "Excellent. I knew you'd see the bigger picture." "The picture is perfectly clear," I said. "I'm resigning, effective 2 weeks from today." The shock on Marcus's face was worth capturing. His confident smile vanished instantly, replaced by genuine surprise, something I'd rarely seen from him. "You're resigning?" He leaned forward. "Blake, let's not be hasty here. I understand you're disappointed with the commission adjustment, but throwing away your career over this is extreme." "I'm not throwing away my career," I replied calmly. "I'm protecting it." He regained his composure quickly. "This is about the Horizon Commission, obviously. Perhaps we can find some middle ground. Maybe a one-time adjustment for this particular deal, given the circumstances." It was remarkable how quickly his position shifted when faced with consequences. Just minutes earlier, the new commission structure had been a non-negotiable business necessity. Now suddenly, there was room for compromise. "It's not just about the money anymore, Marcus," I said. "It's about trust. It's about values. You've made it clear that the company's culture, all that talk about loyalty and family, only applies when it's convenient." He sighed dramatically. "Business is complicated, Blake. Sometimes difficult decisions have to be made for the greater good. The additional capital we're retaining will fund our expansion, create new positions, and provide better benefits for everyone. And a nicer boat for you, I imagine." His eyes narrowed slightly. "That's beneath you, is it? Because from where I'm sitting, what's beneath me is staying at a company where achievements are rewarded with exploitation." I stood up. "My resignation letter is already in your inbox. My 2 weeks' notice begins today." "You're making a serious mistake," Marcus said, his voice hardening. "You realize that your non-compete prevents you from taking any of our clients, right?" I smiled. "I've reviewed my employment contract very carefully. The non-compete covers direct solicitation of clients for 6 months after leaving. It doesn't prevent clients from choosing to follow me on their own initiative." Marcus's face flushed. "Horizon is a Reed Marketing client." "If you think Horizon hired Reed Marketing because of me," I interrupted. "They trusted me. I haven't spoken to them about my resignation yet, and I won't initiate that conversation. But if they reach out to me after I've left, that's their choice." "You planned this?" he accused. "This whole resignation is just a setup to steal our biggest client." "No, Marcus. You created this situation when you decided to change the rules after I'd already won the game." I moved toward the door. "I'll make sure all my projects are properly transitioned before I leave." As I reached for the doorknob, Marcus called out, "Wait." I turned back. "What would it take for you to stay?" He spread his hands. "The full commission? A promotion? Name it." For a moment, I considered it. The full $500,000 would change my life. But then I thought about working under Marcus for years to come, always wondering when the next betrayal would come, always knowing what he was capable of. "There's nothing you can offer me now," I said quietly, and left. Word of my resignation spread quickly through the office. By the next morning, I'd received dozens of messages from colleagues expressing everything from shock to support. Tanya, from finance, stopped by my desk with a coffee. "Bold move," she said. "But for what it's worth, I think you're right." "Thanks." It wasn't an easy decision. She glanced around to make sure no one was listening. You should know. You're not the first. 3 years ago, before you joined the senior team, Ryan Wilson brought in Austin Foods. Nearly $1 million account at the time. Marcus pulled the same stunt with the commission structure. What happened? Ryan took it. Needed the job too, badly, to walk away. He's still bitter about it. That afternoon, my phone rang. Vanessa Blackwell from Horizon. Blake? I just heard a rumor that you're leaving Reed Marketing. Tell me that's not true. I hesitated. I needed to be extremely careful. Here, any suggestion that I was trying to poach Horizon could land me in legal trouble. Vanessa, I can confirm that I've submitted my resignation. It's a personal decision based on some internal matters. This is concerning, she said. Our team specifically chose Reed Marketing because of you and your understanding of our needs. This significantly changes our working relationship. I understand, and I'm committed to ensuring a smooth transition. I've already started preparing detailed documentation for whoever takes over the account. Who will that be? Marcus hasn't decided yet. He might handle it personally, at least initially. There was a long pause. Blake, I'd like to have coffee tomorrow. Not as client and account manager, just as people who respect each other professionally. Is that possible? Again, I had to be careful. I think that would be fine, as long as we're clear that I'm still employed by Reed Marketing until my notice period ends, and I have certain ethical obligations during that time. Of course. Tomorrow at 9, the coffee shop on Michigan Avenue near your office. The next morning, I arrived at the coffee shop 10 minutes early. Vanessa was already there, nursing a latte and working on her laptop. She closed it as I approached. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. I wanted to understand the situation better. I appreciate that, but there are limits to what I can discuss. She nodded. Let me be direct then. Horizon selected Reed Marketing because of you. Your insight, your approach, your accessibility. If you're leaving, that fundamentally changes our arrangement. The agency has many talented people who can— Blake, she interrupted. We both know that's not true. Not at your level, not with your understanding of our needs. I sipped my coffee, buying time to think. I can't advise you on your relationship with Reed Marketing. I'm not asking for advice, Vanessa said. I'm telling you that Horizon is considering our options. Our contract has a 30-day termination clause. We're within our rights to exercise it. My heart began racing. That would be between Horizon and Reed Marketing. What are your plans after you leave? This was dangerous territory. I haven't finalized anything yet. Let me be more specific, Vanessa leaned forward. Are you planning to start your own agency? The question caught me off guard. I hadn't actually gotten that far in my planning. I'd been so focused on the resignation itself, on the principle of the thing, that I hadn't fully mapped out what came next. I've considered it, I admitted. Good. Because if you did start your own agency, and if, hypothetically, Horizon happened, to terminate our relationship with Reed Marketing for reasons entirely unrelated to you, and if, again, hypothetically, we later chose to work with your new venture after you were no longer bound by any non-compete clauses. Well, that would be a series of independent business decisions, wouldn't it? I had to suppress a smile. Hypothetically, yes. Vanessa nodded. Just something to think about. She stood up. I should get back to the office. These are uncertain times for our marketing strategy. When I returned to the office, Marcus was waiting by my desk. Where have you been? He demanded. Coffee break, I replied, sitting down. With Vanessa Blackwell from Horizon? That's quite a coincidence. So he'd had me follow. Classy. Chicago's a small city, Marcus. We ran into each other. And what did you discuss during this? Chance encounter? Nothing that violates my obligations to Reed Marketing. I turned to my computer, signaling that the conversation was over. He didn't move. I've decided to take over the Horizon account personally, effective immediately. I looked up at him. That's your prerogative. I want all your notes, contacts, and strategy documents transferred to me by end of day. Already compiled, I said, pointing to a folder on my desk. I believe in professional transitions. He picked up the folder, clearly surprised by my preparation. The executive team is meeting this afternoon to discuss your situation. I suggest you use this time to reconsider your position. After he left, I called Nate from legal. Marcus knows about my coffee with Vanessa. Had I followed, I think. Nate whistled. He's scared. That's a good sign. For whom? For you. He wouldn't be this paranoid if he didn't think you were a real threat. That afternoon, Marcus's assistant delivered a letter to my desk. It was a revised offer, my full commission for the Horizon deal, a 10% raise, and a promotion to VP of Business Development. The letter emphasized the regrettable misunderstanding regarding the commission structure and Marcus's continued faith in my contributions to the company. I folded the letter and put it in my bag without responding. The next week was tense. Marcus alternated between ignoring me completely and hovering over my work, questioning every email I sent, every call I made. I maintained a rigorous professionalism, focusing solely on transitioning my accounts and documenting my processes. During this time, I was also quietly planning my next steps. I met with a small business attorney recommended by a college friend to discuss the legalities of starting my own agency. I researched office spaces, pricing structures, and potential partners. The idea that had started as a vague possibility was rapidly taking shape. 3 days before my final day, Marcus appeared at my desk again. The Horizon team is requesting a meeting with you before you leave. They have concerns about the transition. I'm happy to meet with them, I said. I'll be joining you, of course. Of course. The meeting was scheduled for the following afternoon at Horizon's headquarters. When we arrived, Vanessa greeted us in the lobby, her expression professionally neutral. Blake, Marcus, thank you both for coming. The executive team is already assembled. In the conference room, we found not just Horizon's marketing team, but their CEO, Jeff Harrington, and their legal counsel as well. My stomach tightened. This was more serious than I'd anticipated. Jeff didn't waste time on pleasantries. We've asked for this meeting to address concerns about our ongoing relationship with Reed Marketing. When we selected your agency, we did so based largely on Blake's approach and understanding of our needs. His departure represents a material change to our agreement. Marcus smiled confidently. While we certainly value Blake's contributions, Reed Marketing's relationship with Horizon is institutional. I've personally taken over your account to ensure continuity, and I've assembled a team of our most experienced strategists to support your initiatives. Jeff nodded. We appreciate that. However, our legal team has reviewed our contract and identified several deliverables that were specifically tied to Blake's involvement. We consider his departure a potential breach of those terms. Marcus's smile faltered. I'm sure we can address any specific concerns. We've prepared a document outlining those concerns, Horizon's lawyer said, sliding folders across the table. We're exercising our 30-day termination clause, effective immediately. The room went silent. Marcus stared at the folder in front of him, his face ashen. This is unexpected, he finally managed. I'm confident we can resolve these issues without such a drastic step. Jeff looked at me, then back to Marcus. This isn't personal, it's business. We entered an agreement with specific expectations about who would be managing our account. Those expectations are no longer being met. The meeting ended shortly thereafter, with Marcus making increasingly desperate attempts to salvage the situation. As we rode the elevator down in silence, I could feel his anger radiating. You did this, he said as soon as we exited the building. You poisoned the well. I did nothing of the sort. I've been nothing but professional throughout this process. Professional? He spat. You engineered this entire situation. Resigned dramatically, met with the client behind my back, and now they're terminating a $10 million contract. You created this situation, Marcus, not me. When you decided that your word meant nothing, that loyalty only flows upward, you set this in motion. Actions have consequences. His face contorted with rage. You're done at Reed Marketing. Don't bother coming in tomorrow. We'll mail your final check. That works for me, I said calmly. Good luck with the company. I walked away, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The next day, instead of going to the office, I signed a lease on a small office space in the West Loop. Nothing fancy, just a starting point. I spent the day ordering furniture, setting up utilities, and filing paperwork to establish Thompson's strategic marketing. Exactly 1 week later, my non-solicitation period still in full effect, I received an email from Vanessa Blackwell. Blake, Horizon Innovations is currently evaluating marketing partners for our upcoming campaigns. Based on your previous work in the industry, we would like to invite you to submit a proposal. Please let me know if you're interested in discussing this opportunity. I smiled as I read it. She had been careful with her wording. No mention of our previous work together, no suggestion that I had influenced their decision to leave Reed Marketing. I replied with equal care. Vanessa, thank you for thinking of me. I would be very interested in discussing how Thompson's strategic marketing might support Horizon's initiatives. I'm available to meet at your convenience. 2 months later, Thompson Strategic Marketing signed its first major client, Horizon Innovations. The 3-year contract was worth $3.5 million annually, slightly more than they'd been paying Reed Marketing. The irony wasn't lost on me. If Marcus had simply honored the original commission agreement, he would have paid me $500,000 once and kept a $10 million client. Instead, his greed cost him not just the client, but his agency's reputation as well. Within 6 months, 3 more major clients had followed Horizon to my new firm, along with 4 of Reed Marketing's top performers, including Tanya from finance and Nate from legal. A year after my resignation, I heard that Reed Marketing was being acquired by a larger agency at a fraction of what it had been worth when I left. Marcus, I was told, had taken a consulting position with the new owners, corporate speak for being pushed aside. As for me, that first honest commission, the full value of the Horizon deal, became the seed money that grew into something far more valuable than just a payday. It built a company where talent was respected, promises were kept, and success was truly shared. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just succeeding. It's succeeding by doing things the right way. Success has a way of compounding itself, but it also brings new challenges. By our 2nd year of operation, Thompson Strategic Marketing had grown from just me in that small West Loop office to a team of 17 professionals handling accounts worth over $15 million annually. We'd moved to a more spacious location, in River North, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline, ironically with a direct view of the Reed Marketing building in the distance. The transformation hadn't been without growing pains. Managing people was infinitely more complex than managing projects. Every new hire brought their own expectations, work styles, and perspectives. I was determined not to become Marcus 2.0, to build a company that actually lived the values it preached. But I quickly learned that good intentions aren't enough. We need to formalize our commission structure, Tanya advised during one of our strategy sessions. She'd become my CFO and most trusted advisor. Right now, it's basically whatever Blake thinks is fair, which worked when we were 5 people, but not with nearly 20 and growing. I know, I conceded. I just don't want to create something rigid that doesn't account for different situations. Well, that's actually the problem. Without clear guidelines, people don't know what to expect or how to value their contributions. Transparency is better than ambiguity, even if the transparent system isn't perfect. She was right, of course. We spent weeks crafting a compensation framework that balanced predictability with flexibility, documented it clearly, and presented it to the team. Unlike Marcus, I made sure the new structure would only apply to future deals, never retroactively. The Horizon account continued to be our anchor client, but we'd diversified significantly. Vanessa had introduced us to several businesses in her network, and our reputation for delivering customized, thoughtful marketing strategies, as opposed to one-size-fits-all templates, had spread. We were now competitive with agencies twice our size. I was in the middle of a creative briefing when my assistant interrupted. "Blake, sorry to disturb you, but there's a Jesse Warner here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important." The name wasn't familiar. "Did he say what it's regarding?" "Just that it's a sensitive business matter." He seems intense. Curious, I excused myself from the meeting. In the reception area, I found a man in his early 30s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, pacing nervously. "Mr. Warner? I'm Blake Thompson." He turned quickly. "Thank you for seeing me without an appointment. I apologize for the intrusion." "No problem. Let's talk in my office." Once seated, Jesse got straight to the point. "I'm currently the Senior Business Development Manager at Archer & Klein." Archer & Klein was one of Chicago's largest marketing agencies, nearly 200 employees and a client roster that included several Fortune 500 companies. "I've heard good things," I said. "What can I do for you?" He leaned forward. 2 months ago, I landed at Meridian Healthcare. Annual contract value of nearly $12 million over 3 years. I whistled appreciatively. Meridian was a rapidly expanding hospital network with locations across the Midwest. "Congratulations. That's a major win." "It was," he said, his expression darkening. "Until yesterday, when I was informed that our commission structure for premium accounts had been revised. Retroactively." The hair on my arms stood up. "Let me guess. They defined premium accounts as anything over a certain dollar amount and substantially reduced the commission percentage." Jesse's eyes widened. "Exactly. From 12% down to 4%. They're saying it's standard industry practice for accounts of this size. And this revision happened after you closed the deal, but before you were paid." He nodded, looking surprised at my understanding. "Yes. How did you—" "Because the exact same thing happened to me 3 years ago at Reed Marketing. It's why I started this company." "I know," Jesse said. "That's why I'm here." Now it was my turn to be surprised. "You know about what happened with Reed?" "It's something of a legend in certain circles. The account manager who got screwed out of his commission, quit on principle, then ended up winning back the client and building his own successful agency. That's why I came to you. I wanted to know, how did you do it? How did you start over from scratch and build all this in just 3 years?" I studied him for a moment. "Are you considering leaving Archer & Klein?" "I've already decided to leave. My resignation letter is drafted. I just haven't submitted it yet. I wanted to have a plan first. And Meridian? Are they happy with Archer & Klein so far?" "The ink on the contract is barely dry. The real work hasn't even started yet." He hesitated. "My primary contact there is the CEO, Sophia Martinez. We have a strong professional relationship. She specifically requested that I lead their account." I nodded thoughtfully. "And your contract with Archer & Klein? Any non-compete or non-solicitation clauses?" 6-month non-solicitation for clients I personally brought in. But here's the interesting part. The contract specifies that this only applies to clients with whom Archer & Klein has established a productive working relationship. Given that we've barely started with Meridian, it's a gray area, I finished for him, legally and ethically. Exactly. I leaned back in my chair, considering the situation. On one hand, I intimately understood Jesse's position, the sense of betrayal, the righteous anger, the desire for justice. On the other hand, I'd built Thompson's strategic marketing with a commitment to ethical business practices. The line between justified self-preservation and poaching clients could be razor thin. Let me be direct, Jesse. Are you here looking for a job, advice on starting your own agency, or something else? He took a deep breath. Initially, I came for advice. I thought, who better to guide me than someone who's been through exactly this? But now that I'm here, I'm wondering if there might be a potential fit with Thompson. Your company has the reputation and infrastructure that would take me years to build on my own. This was unexpected. I hadn't been planning to hire at Jesse's level, but the possibility was intriguing. Someone with his drive and connections could accelerate our growth significantly. And if Meridian happened to follow him, here's what I won't do, I said firmly. I won't hire you with the explicit understanding that you'll bring Meridian with you. That crosses an ethical line I'm not willing to cross. If you were to join us, it would be based on your skills, experience, and cultural fit. Nothing else. He nodded. I understand and respect that position. That said, I continued, if you join Thompson, complete your non-solicitation period honorably, and Meridian independently decides to review their agency relationship afterward, well, we'd certainly be interested in pitching for their business. Jesse smiled. That sounds reasonable. But before we discuss anything further, I need to know more about you. Your approach, your values, your vision. Because this company's culture is non-negotiable for me. We don't just talk about integrity, we live it. Over the next 2 hours, Jesse and I had the kind of deep, probing conversation that goes far beyond a typical job interview. I learned about his background, his methods, his motivations. He was hungry and ambitious, but also thoughtful about the impact of his work. Most importantly, he seemed genuinely disturbed by Archer and Klein's bait-and-switch tactics, not just because it affected him personally, but because it violated his sense of fairness. By the end of our meeting, I was convinced he would be an asset to Thompson. We agreed on a compensation package that included a base salary slightly below what he was making at Archer and Klein, but with a more generous and transparently documented commission structure. He would start in 1 month after giving appropriate notice to his current employer. I want to be absolutely clear about one thing, I said as we shook hands. During your non-solicitation period, you will have 0 contact with Meridian or any other former clients. Not a call, not an email, not a running into them at an industry event. We play by the rules here, even when others don't. Understood, Jesse said. That's exactly why I want to work here. After Jesse left, I called Tanya into my office and explained the situation. You realize this could get messy? She warned. Archer and Klein isn't Reed Marketing. They're a major player with serious resources and connections. I know. But if we're careful and ethical in our approach, we're on solid ground. She raised an eyebrow. And you're not at all motivated by the poetic justice of the situation? Another account manager screwed over by another greedy agency? I smiled. Maybe that's a small factor. Just be careful, Blake. Success has made us a target. Adding Meridian to our client list, if that eventually happens, would put us in direct competition with the big agencies. The sharks will start circling. She wasn't wrong. When word got out that Jesse Warner had joined Thompson Strategic Marketing, the industry noticed. Speculation about his reasons for leaving Archer and Klein, and whether Meridian might follow, ran rampant. Our competitors began watching us more closely, and we even lost a potential client who had close ties to Archer and Klein's leadership. Jesse proved to be worth the trouble. He integrated well with our team, brought fresh perspectives to our strategies, and worked diligently on the accounts assigned to him. He never mentioned Meridian, honoring his commitment to maintain distance during the non-solicitation period. 6 months and 2 days after Jesse's official start date, he stepped into my office with a curious expression. I just received an interesting email, he said, from Sophia Martinez at Meridian Healthcare. My pulse quickened. What did it say? Meridian is conducting a review of their marketing partnerships and would like to discuss potential opportunities with Thompson Strategic Marketing. Not with you specifically? No, with the agency. She obviously knows I work here now, but she was careful with her wording. I nodded appreciatively. Smart woman, and the timing, just after your non-solicitation period ended, is unlikely to be coincidental. So, what do? We responded professionally, thanked her for her interest, and set up a meeting. Then we prepare a proposal that blows them away. I paused. But Jesse, you understand that this puts a spotlight on us, right? Archer and Klein will almost certainly claim that you violated your agreement, even if you followed it to the letter. No, but I've documented everything. No contact whatsoever during the restricted period. Sophia reached out to us, not the other way around. We're clean. Clean doesn't always matter in the court of public opinion, or even in actual court sometimes. Are you prepared for that fight? He straightened his shoulders. Absolutely. They shouldn't have changed the rules after I'd already won the game. I smiled at the echo of my own words from years ago. 2 weeks later, we presented to Meridian's executive team. Jesse provided background context and industry insights, but I led the pitch, another deliberate choice to demonstrate that this was Thompson's strategic marketing pursuing the client, not just Jesse Warner bringing his contacts along. Sophia Martinez was impressive, sharp, direct, and focused on measurable outcomes. She asked the toughest questions, specifically about how we would handle potential conflicts with Archer and Klein. We understand this is a sensitive transition, I acknowledged. We've prepared a detailed onboarding process that minimizes disruption, while honoring all legal and ethical obligations. Transparency is a core value for us. We'll never surprise you with hidden agendas or changing terms. Her eyes met mine, and I could tell she caught the implicit reference to what had happened with Jesse's commission. Consistency and trust are important to us as well, Mr. Thompson. The following day, Meridian informed us that they were terminating their relationship with Archer and Klein and signing with Thompson Strategic Marketing. The 3-year contract would be worth approximately $13 million, slightly more than their previous arrangement. As predicted, Archer and Klein didn't take the news well. They filed a lawsuit against both Jesse and our agency, claiming breach of contract, tortious interference, and misappropriation of trade secrets. Their legal team sent threatening letters to Meridian, implying that they too could face litigation for terminating their contract prematurely. This is about intimidation, not law, our attorney explained during an emergency meeting. Their legal claims are weak, but they're hoping we'll be scared into backing down. They can't stomach losing a client of this size, especially to a smaller competitor founded by someone with your history. So what's our move? I asked. We fight, Jesse said firmly. We have documentation of everything. We followed the rules they set, even as they broke their promises. If we back down now, we're no better than they are. I looked around the room at the team we'd built, professionals who had chosen to work with us because of our reputation for integrity as much as our success. They deserved leadership that stood by its principles. Jesse's right, I said. We fight, not just for this contract, but for what Thompson Strategic Marketing stands for. The legal battle lasted 9 grueling months. Discovery revealed that Archer and Klein had changed their commission structure multiple times over the years, always after major client acquisitions, always to the detriment of the employees who had secured those clients. Several former employees came forward with similar stories. Meridian stood firm despite the pressure, with Sophia Martinez giving a devastating deposition about why they had chosen to leave Archer and Klein, citing poor communication, strategic misalignment, and a culture of prioritizing profits over client success. In the end, Archer and Klein settled, dropping all claims in exchange for a trivial payment that amounted to little more than a face-saving gesture. The industry took notice. Trade publications ran features analyzing the case. Our reputation for standing our ground, ethically and legally, enhanced our standing. One evening, after the dust had settled, I found Jesse working late in his office. Still here? We won, remember? You're allowed to go home occasionally, he looked up with a tired smile. Just finishing the Q3 strategy for Meridian. Their board meeting is next week. I sat down across from him. You know, when you walked into my office that day, I never imagined we'd end up here. Fighting off lawsuits, adding major clients, becoming the agency that others are watching. Was it worth it? Every second, I said without hesitation. Not just because we've grown or because we're profitable, but because we've built something that operates by a different set of rules, something that proves you can succeed without compromising your values. Jesse nodded thoughtfully. When I left Archer and Klein, I was mostly angry. I wanted justice, or maybe just revenge, but this has become about something bigger. That's the thing about principles, I replied. Stand by them long enough, and they stop being just about you. They become a blueprint for something larger than yourself. I looked out the window at the Chicago skyline, at all those buildings filled with businesses making choices every day about what kind of culture they would build, what values they would uphold when tested. 3 years ago, Marcus Reed taught me the most important business lesson of my life, though not the one he intended. He showed me exactly what kind of leader I didn't want to be. Every decision since then, from our commission structure to fighting that lawsuit, has been shaped by that lesson. Jesse raised his coffee mug in a mock toast. To Marcus Reed and Arthur Klein, then. May their short-sightedness continue to fuel our success. I laughed. I'll drink that. 5 years after founding Thompson Strategic Marketing, we'd grown to a team of 42 employees managing over $30 million in annual client contracts. Our office now occupied the entire 23rd floor of a sleek downtown building, and we'd been named one of Chicago's fastest-growing companies 2 years running. Success brought a new set of challenges. We were no longer the scrappy underdog, but an established player with a reputation to maintain. Larger competitors regularly tried to poach our talent, and maintaining our company culture with rapid growth required constant attention. One particularly bright Tuesday morning, my assistant buzzed me. Blake, there's Marcus Reed here to see you. No appointment. The name hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't seen or spoken to Marcus since that final day at Reed Marketing, though I'd heard through industry channels that things hadn't gone well for him. After the merger, he'd been pushed into an increasingly marginal role before leaving altogether. Send him in, I said after a moment's hesitation. 5 years had aged Marcus considerably. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by a slight stoop. His designer suit looked a size too large, and his once perfect hair was thinning. Blake, he said, standing awkwardly by the door. Thank you for seeing me. Have a seat, I offered, keeping my tone neutral. What brings you here? He settled into the chair across from my desk, taking in the office with a quick glance. You've done well for yourself. I always knew you had potential. Marcus, I'm sure you didn't come here to compliment my career trajectory. He smiled faintly. Direct as ever. No, I came because I'm looking for an opportunity, and I thought, given our history, I raised an eyebrow. Given our history, I'm the last person you'd approach for a job. People make mistakes, Blake. Business decisions. That in retrospect might have been handled differently. Is that what you call changing my commission structure after I landed Horizon? A business decision that might have been handled differently? He sighed heavily. What do you want me to say? That I was wrong? Fine, I was wrong. I got greedy. I saw a huge payday and wanted to keep more of it for myself. It backfired spectacularly. He gestured vaguely at my office. You're living proof of that. The raw admission caught me off guard. I'd expected excuses, justifications, deflection, not this blunt acknowledgement. What happened after the merger? I asked, genuinely curious. Pretty much what you'd expect. The acquiring company had their own leadership team. I was gradually sidelined, then offered a generous package to step away entirely. He paused. I invested most of it in a tech startup that promised to revolutionize social media analytics. It didn't. So you're here because you need a job. I'm here because I need a second chance, he corrected. And because despite everything, you knew me when I was building something worthwhile. Before I made the mistakes that cost me everything. For a moment, I considered it. Marcus had been a skilled marketer before greed clouded his judgment. He had decades of experience and connections throughout the industry. Under different circumstances, he might have been a valuable addition to the team. But some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. I can't hire you, Marcus, I said finally. His face fell. Because of what happened with Horizon? That was 5 years ago. No, not because of what happened with Horizon. I leaned forward. Because you haven't really changed. You came in here calling your actions mistakes and business decisions, as if they were just strategic errors. You betrayed my trust. You changed the rules after the game was played. You tried to take credit for relationships I built and work I did. I've learned my lesson. Have you? Because what I'm hearing isn't, I understand that my actions were fundamentally wrong, but rather I miscalculated and it cost me. Those are very different realizations, Marcus. He stared at me for a long moment. So that's it? No second chances? This industry is full of agencies. I'm sure someone will give you an opportunity. But it won't be Thompson Strategic Marketing. I stood up. Our company culture is our most valuable asset. I can't risk compromising that. As I showed him out, he paused at the door. You know, I created you in a way. If I hadn't cut your commission, you'd still be working for someone else instead of running all this. I smiled. That's true. Your betrayal was the push I needed. But don't mistake that for gratitude. After Marcus left, I walked to the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. His visit had stirred up memories of those early days, the anger, the uncertainty, the risk of starting over. My assistant's voice came over the intercom. Your 10 o'clock is here. The Northwestern MBA students? I'd almost forgotten. I'd agreed to speak to a group of business students about entrepreneurship and agency leadership. When I entered the conference room, 15 eager faces looked up at me. Young, ambitious, full of potential, just as I had been at Reed Marketing all those years ago. Good morning, I began. I'm Blake Thompson, founder of Thompson Strategic Marketing. I'm supposed to talk to you today about building a successful agency, but I'd like to focus on something more fundamental, the role of ethics in business leadership. For the next hour, I shared the story of Horizon, Marcus, and the founding of Thompson Strategic Marketing. I watched their expressions shift from shock to understanding to determination. The standard advice is that business is business, that personal feelings shouldn't enter into professional decisions, I told them. But that's backward. Business is fundamentally personal because it's conducted by people, with people, for people. The moment we forget that, the moment we prioritize profits over principles, we've already failed, regardless of the numbers on the balance sheet. One student raised her hand. But if Reed Marketing hadn't changed your commission structure, you might never have started your own agency. In a way, they did you a favor. I smiled, thinking of Marcus's parting words. That's true. Sometimes our greatest opportunities come disguised as our worst setbacks. But that doesn't justify the betrayal. It just means I found a way to transform that negative experience into something positive. Another student asked, "What would you have done differently if you could go back?" I considered the question carefully. Honestly, nothing. Not because every decision was perfect, but because each step, including the painful ones, led to where we are today. Thompson Strategic Marketing isn't just successful by conventional metrics. We've built a company where people want to work, where clients know they'll be treated fairly, where we stand by our word even when it costs us. After the students left, I returned to my office and picked up the framed document on my wall. Our first contract with Horizon Innovations. It had been a turning point, the moment when a betrayal transformed into an opportunity. I thought about Marcus, walking away defeated, and felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. Not regret, he'd made his choices and had to live with them, but recognition of how easily ambition can curdle into greed, how quickly success can blind us to the values that should guide us. My phone rang. Vanessa Blackwell from Horizon, still our client after all these years. Blake, got a minute? We're thinking about expanding our influencer strategy for the new product line. I'd love your thoughts. Always for you, Vanessa. What are you considering? As we talked through strategies and possibilities, I was reminded, again, of what really matters in this business. Relationships built on trust, consistent delivery on promises, and the courage to stand by your principles even when it would be easier to compromise. Sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads to gaining what you truly needed. Marcus had inadvertently given me that lesson, along with the motivation to build something better than what I'd lost. For that unintended gift, perhaps I did owe him a measure of gratitude after all. 7 years into Thomson Strategic Marketing's existence, we faced our biggest challenge yet. The marketing landscape was shifting dramatically, with traditional approaches giving way to AI-driven analytics, hyper-personalization, and immersive digital experiences. Agencies that failed to evolve quickly found themselves obsolete. I'd recognized this shift early and invested heavily in building a tech-forward division, hiring data scientists and developers alongside our creative team. The transition hadn't been easy. Many of our veteran staff were uncomfortable with the new direction, and we'd lost a few talented people who preferred more traditional marketing approaches. The quarterly numbers are in, Tanya announced during our leadership meeting. Tech services now account for 43% of our revenue, up from 28% last year. Jesse nodded approvingly. The Meridian Healthcare app campaign alone generated more revenue than our entire print division. But at what cost? This came from Diana Chen, our creative director who'd been with us since year 2. Our creative team feels increasingly sidelined. They're artists being asked to think like engineers. It's not either or, I countered. The best campaigns integrate both. Data tells us where to aim. Creativity tells us how to connect. Diana sighed. In theory, yes. In practice, the tech side is getting most of the resources and attention while traditional creative is treated as an afterthought. She wasn't entirely wrong. The rapid pivot toward technology had created an unintentional hierarchy within the company. The tension between our tech and creative teams was becoming a significant issue, exactly the kind of cultural fracture I'd always worked to prevent. After the meeting, Tanya lingered behind. Diana has a point, she said once we were alone. We're at risk of becoming something very different from what we set out to build. We have to evolve, I replied. I know the industry is changing, but there's adapting to market realities, and there's losing your identity. Blake, when you started this company, it wasn't just about making money. It was about creating a place where talented people could do their best work while being treated with respect and fairness. Her words hit home. In our rush to stay competitive, had we compromised the values that made Thomson Strategic Marketing special in the first place? That evening, I stayed late reviewing our current projects, client feedback, and employee satisfaction surveys. The data told a concerning story. While our tech-forward clients were thrilled with our work, our long-term clients felt we'd lost some of the personalized creative touch that had initially drawn them to us. Similarly, our newer tech-focused employees reported high job satisfaction, while our creative team's morale had been steadily declining. We were becoming 2 agencies under one roof, with an increasingly pronounced divide between them. The next morning, I called an all-hands meeting. I've been doing some reflecting, I began, addressing the entire company. When I founded Thomson Strategic Marketing, I had a clear vision: to build an agency that valued people, both clients and employees, above all else. That treated integrity as non-negotiable. That delivered exceptional work without compromising our principles. I paused, looking around at the faces watching me, some familiar from the earliest days, others recent additions bringing fresh perspectives and skills. Recently, I've realized we're at risk of losing sight of that vision. Not through any dramatic misstep, but through a series of small compromises made in the name of growth and evolution. The division between our tech and creative teams isn't just an organizational challenge. It's a symptom of straying from our core identity. The room was silent. Even those who hadn't been directly affected by the tension seemed to recognize the truth in my words. Starting today, we're implementing a new approach. Every project team will include both technical and creative professionals from the outset, not just at handoff points. We're investing in cross-training programs so our creative team can better understand data analytics, and our tech team can appreciate creative processes. Diana and our Chief Technology Officer exchanged skeptical glances. I know integration is easier said than done, I acknowledged. That's why I'm also announcing a structural change. We're creating integrated client teams, permanent groups of tech and creative specialists who will work together consistently, learning each other's strengths and building mutual respect. Over the next few months, the reorganization proved even more challenging than anticipated. Long-established workflows were disrupted. People who had rarely interacted were suddenly collaborating daily. Frustrations mounted as different working styles clashed. "This isn't working," Diana told me bluntly after a particularly difficult project launch. The tech team steamrolls creative input, reducing our designers to mere executors of data-driven directives. Meanwhile, our CTO had his own complaints. The creative team treats data insights as optional suggestions rather than actionable intelligence. They prioritize their artistic vision over measurable results. It would have been easy to retreat back to our previous structure. But I remained convinced that integration was not just necessary for our business, but essential to preserving our company's soul. The turning point came unexpectedly, through a potential new client, Global Reach, an international educational nonprofit looking to modernize their outreach to donors and program participants across diverse global markets. "They need everything we offer," Jesse explained as we prepared for the pitch. "Data analytics to identify donor patterns, creative campaigns that resonate across cultural boundaries, technical implementation across multiple platforms, and the IA personal touch to maintain relationships with stakeholders worldwide. This is the perfect opportunity to demonstrate our integrated approach," I decided. Instead of our usual pitch team, we'll bring representatives from both tech and creative. Diana and Mike can co-lead. Diana looked surprised. "You want me and the CTO to lead together?" "We rarely agree on anything." "Exactly. This client needs both perspectives, working in harmony. Show them and yourselves what's possible when we truly collaborate." The preparation for the pitch was rocky, with heated debates about everything from the presentation structure to the central campaign concept. But something unexpected happened through the conflict. Genuine integration began to emerge. The tech team's data insights informed and enhanced creative concepts, while the creative team's human-centered approach gave context and meaning to the analytics. When pitch day arrived, Diana and Mike presented not as representatives of competing divisions, but as partners with complementary strengths. Their natural tension transformed into dynamic energy. The Global Reach executives were visibly impressed. "What stood out was how your technical and creative approaches intertwined," their CEO told us afterward. "Most agencies we've met either excel at data-driven strategy or creative execution. You're the first that seems equally strong in both. And, more importantly, you integrate them seamlessly." We won the account, the largest new client in our history. But the real victory was internal. The success of the integrated pitch became a proof of concept that resonated throughout the company. "I didn't think it could work," Diana admitted during our celebration. "I was convinced we were speaking different languages." "We were," Mike agreed. "We still are, in many ways. But that's actually our strength, not our weakness. We just needed to learn how to translate." Over the following year, the integration that had begun as a forced initiative became our defining advantage. We developed proprietary processes that leveraged both data-driven insights and creative intuition, resulting in campaigns that not only performed exceptionally well by metrics, but also connected emotionally with audiences. Our client retention rate reached an all-time high of 94%, and employee satisfaction scores rebounded across both technical and creative teams. The artificial hierarchy that had been forming dissolved as mutual respect grew between different disciplines. One evening, as we celebrated the successful completion of our first major campaign for global reach, Jessie pulled me aside. "You know, when you announced the integration plan, I thought you were making a mistake. The industry was clearly moving toward specialization, not generalization." "I remember." "You weren't subtle about your doubts," I replied with a smile. "But you were right. By refusing to choose between technology and creativity, by insisting they could and should coexist, you preserved what makes Thomson special while still evolving." I glanced around the room at our team. Technical specialists deep in conversation with designers, data analysts laughing with copywriters, developers and art directors sketching ideas together. It wasn't about preserving the past or embracing the future, I said. It was about remembering why we built this place to begin with, not just to create effective marketing, but to create a community where different types of talent are equally valued. Jessie nodded thoughtfully. "It's the same principle you applied when Marcus tried to change your commission structure all those years ago. Refusing to accept false choices, believing there was a better way, even when conventional wisdom said otherwise." His observation surprised me. I hadn't made that connection myself, but he was right. The same instinct that had led me to leave Reed Marketing rather than accept an unjust system had guided me through this latest challenge. "The marketing industry will keep changing," I acknowledged. "New technologies, new channels, new client expectations. But our fundamental approach doesn't have to change with it. We can adapt without compromising." Later that night, I found myself reflecting on the journey from that moment in Marcus's office 7 years ago to now. What had begun as a response to betrayal had evolved into something far more meaningful. A company that not only succeeded by conventional metrics, but stood for something larger than profit. I realized that the true measure of success wasn't in our client list or revenue figures, impressive as they were. It was in creating an environment where people could do their best work while being treated with dignity and fairness, where different perspectives weren't just tolerated, but actively integrated, where we consistently chose the harder right over the easier wrong. The next morning, I received an email from a former employee who had recently launched her own small agency. "I wanted to thank you," she wrote. "Not just for the opportunities you gave me at Thomson, but for showing me what ethical leadership looks like in practice. In an industry where cutting corners and shifting promises is often the norm, you built something different. That example guides me daily as I build my own company. Some questions aren't about profit margins, but about who we want to be and what legacy we want to leave. You taught me to consider those questions first." I smiled as I read her words, recognizing that the most valuable thing we build in business isn't a client list or a balance sheet, it's influence. Not the kind that comes from power or position, but the kind that comes from consistently demonstrating that success and integrity aren't competing values. Marcus Reed's Betrayal had grown not just a successful company, but a living example of an alternative approach to business, one that was now spreading beyond our walls as former employees carried those values to new ventures. That, more than any account won or award received, was the true vindication of the choice I'd made 7 years ago to walk away from injustice and build something better in its place. 10 years. A decade since I walked out of Marcus Reed's office, choosing principle over paycheck. Thomson's strategic marketing had grown beyond anything I could have imagined that day. Over 100 employees across 3 offices, a client roster that included multinational corporations and innovative startups alike, and an industry-wide reputation not just for exceptional work, but for ethical leadership. Success brought new opportunities, including acquisition offers from larger, holding companies eager to add our integrated approach and stellar client relationships to their portfolios. I'd rejected these overtures consistently, preferring independence to the constraints that would inevitably come with corporate ownership. But the landscape was shifting again. Consolidation was accelerating across the industry, with independent agencies increasingly squeezed between massive global networks and specialized boutiques. Meanwhile, many of our original team members, people who had been with us since the early days, were approaching new life stages, thinking about retirement or career transitions. "We need to discuss succession planning," Tanya said during one of our quarterly strategy sessions. As our CFO and my most trusted advisor, she had a knack for raising difficult but necessary conversations. "You've built something remarkable here, Blake, but Thomson's strategic marketing can't be dependent on you forever." She was right, though the thought made me uncomfortable. I'd worked so hard to shape the company's values and culture that the idea of stepping back, of trusting someone else to maintain what we'd built, was difficult to contemplate. "What are you suggesting?" "We have options," she replied. "We could develop internal leadership to eventually take over. We could consider a management buyout. Or we could revisit some of those acquisition offers, but with stricter conditions about preserving our culture and approach." Jesse, now our chief strategy officer, leaned forward. "There's another possibility. We could transition to employee ownership, an ESOP model. The company would belong to the people who built it alongside you." The idea resonated immediately. Employee ownership would protect our independence while ensuring that Thomson's strategic marketing remained true to its founding principles. It would reward the team that had made our success possible and create a sustainable path forward. "I like it," I said. "Let's explore that option seriously." As we began investigating the complexities of transitioning to an employee stock ownership plan, an unexpected email arrived in my inbox. An invitation to speak at the National Marketing Association's annual conference. The topic: Ethical Leadership in a Data-Driven World. "You should do it," Diana encouraged me when I mentioned it during our leadership team lunch. "Your journey from Reed marketing to building Thomson is exactly the kind of story people need to hear right now." I wasn't so sure. While I occasionally spoke to business students or industry groups, a keynote at the national conference would put me, and our company's approach, under much broader scrutiny. "I'm not comfortable positioning myself as some guru of ethical leadership," I admitted. "We've made plenty of mistakes along the way." "That's precisely why you should do it," Mike, our CTO, countered. "Nobody wants to hear from someone claiming perfection. They want authentic experiences, including the struggles and failures." After consideration, I accepted the invitation. As I prepared my presentation over the following weeks, I found myself reflecting deeply on the entirety of our journey, from that pivotal moment with Marcus to our current crossroads considering employee ownership. The day of the conference arrived. Looking out at the audience of over 1,000 marketing professionals, I felt a momentary hesitation. These people represented the full spectrum of our industry, from massive global networks to tiny boutiques, from traditionalists to cutting-edge innovators. Would our story resonate with such a diverse group? 10 years ago, I began, I was faced with a choice that would define my career. My boss had just changed the commission structure retroactively after I'd landed the biggest client in the company's history. effectively taking $335,000 that I had earned according to the rules we'd been operating under. I described that confrontation. With Marcus, my decision to resign, and the uncertain path of starting a new agency with nothing but principles and determination. This isn't a story about revenge, though it might sound that way at first. It's about the unexpected places we can go when we refuse to accept false choices, when we insist that success and integrity aren't competing values. I walked the audience through our evolution, from winning back Horizon innovations to our recent innovations integrating technical and creative approaches. I shared both successes and struggles honestly, including our near failure when we'd lost sight of our cultural foundation during rapid technological transition. The conventional wisdom in business often presents ethical dilemmas as binary choices: profit or principle, growth or values, innovation or tradition. My experience has taught me that these are false dichotomies. The most sustainable success comes from rejecting that framing entirely and finding the path that honors both. As I concluded my presentation, I shared our plans to transition Thomson Strategic Marketing to employee ownership. This next step feels like the natural evolution of our founding philosophy. If this company began as a rejection of top-down exploitation, what better future than to place its ownership in the hands of the people who create its value every day? The response was overwhelming, a standing ovation followed by a flood of people wanting to continue the conversation. Marketing professionals from agencies large and small shared their own ethical dilemmas and asked for guidance. Several approached me about joining Thomson, inspired by our approach. Most surprising was a conversation with Elizabeth Vega, CEO of Vega Partners, one of the largest independent marketing holding companies in the country. She'd been in the audience and requested a private meeting the following day. "Your presentation resonated with me," she said when we met in her office. "Particularly your thoughts on false dichotomies. I've been wrestling with similar questions about Vega's future." Elizabeth explained that at 62 she was planning her eventual retirement. "I've had the usual parade of private equity firms and global networks offering to acquire us. The money would be substantial, but I've seen what typically happens. After such acquisitions, cost-cutting, talent exodus, cultural erosion. It's the standard playbook," I agreed. "What you're doing with employee ownership is intriguing, but Vega is too large and complex for that approach to be practical for us." She paused. "I have a different proposition. What if Thomson Strategic Marketing and Vega Partners explored a merger?" I must have looked skeptical because she quickly continued. "Not a traditional acquisition where one entity absorbs the other, but a true merger of equals, forming a new kind of marketing group. One built around the principles you articulated yesterday, rejecting false choices between creativity and technology, between profit and ethics." "That's not what I was expecting," I admitted. "Consider it. Your approach at Thomson has proven that ethical leadership can create exceptional business results. My question is, can it scale? Can we build a major marketing group that maintains those values while competing with the global giants?" The question lingered with me long after our meeting. Could Thomson's approach work beyond our carefully cultivated environment? Was there a way to grow without compromising the principles that defined us? Back at our office, I convened our leadership team to discuss Elizabeth's proposal. "A merger with Vega would give us international reach overnight," Jesse pointed out. "Their client list is complementary to ours with minimal overlap. But their culture is very different," Diana countered. "More traditional, more hierarchical. How would that integrate with our approach?" Tanya, ever practical, focused on the numbers. "Financially, it's compelling. Combined, we'd have the resources to compete with much larger networks while remaining independent of outside investors." The debate continued for hours, with valid points on both sides. The opportunity was significant, but so were the risks. Eventually, I raised my hand to pause the discussion. "We're approaching this the wrong way," I said. "We're thinking like typical businesses evaluating a merger, focusing on market share, client lists, and financial projections. Those matter, but they're not the starting point. The first question is simpler. Would this merger advance or undermine our fundamental purpose? And what exactly is that purpose? Mike asked. Beyond making money by creating effective marketing campaigns? It was a fair question, one that forced me to articulate something I'd felt but never fully expressed. Thomson exists to demonstrate that the marketing industry can operate differently, that we can deliver exceptional results without the cutthroat tactics, the broken promises, the treating of people as disposable resources. We're not just building campaigns. We're building an alternative model for how this business can work. The room fell silent as my words sank in. If that's truly our purpose, Jesse said slowly, then maybe this merger isn't a distraction from it, but an opportunity to advance it on a larger scale. Diana nodded. A chance to prove that our approach isn't just viable for a mid-sized independent, but could transform larger organizations too. Or a risk that we'll be the ones transformed, and not for the better, Tanya cautioned. Cultural integration fails more often than it succeeds. The conversation shifted from whether we should pursue the merger to how we might structure it, to protect and extend our values rather than dilute them. Over the following weeks, a vision emerged for a new kind of marketing group, one built around a shared set of principles rather than just combined service offerings. After months of careful negotiation and planning, Thomson Strategic Marketing and Vega Partners announced their merger, creating Vega Thomson Partners. The press release emphasized our shared vision, combining world-class capabilities with unwavering ethical standards to demonstrate that the most effective marketing is also the most principled. The integration process was neither simple nor painless. Cultural differences created friction. Some team members from both organizations left, uncomfortable with the changes. But the majority embraced the vision, particularly as they saw our combined principles put into practice, not just in client work, but in internal policies, compensation structures, and decision-making processes. 1 year after the merger, we gathered for a company-wide celebration. Elizabeth and I took the stage together to reflect on the journey. When Blake and I first discussed joining forces, Elizabeth said, we weren't primarily focused on becoming bigger. We wanted to be better, to create an organization that could challenge industry norms while delivering exceptional results for our clients. I nodded. Many people told us it couldn't be done, that values get diluted as organizations grow, that principles inevitably get compromised in pursuit of profit. We rejected that false choice. Looking out at the hundreds of faces before us, people who had embraced this vision and were bringing it to life daily, I felt a profound sense of vindication. Not just personal vindication for the choice I'd made in Marcus's office a decade earlier, but validation of the idea that business could operate differently. After the celebration, I found a quiet moment to call Vanessa Blackwell, still at Horizon. Innovations after all these years, and still our client, now part of Vega Thomson's portfolio. Congratulations on the successful merger, she said. Though I have to admit, I was nervous when I first heard about it. Change often leads to declining service. And, she laughed, and I should have known better. If anything, your team is even more attentive now, with greater resources to support our needs. I'm glad to hear it. You know, she said reflectively, when we first met at that charity gala all those years ago, I chose to work with you because you actually listened when everyone else was just selling. That approach has remained consistent through all your growth and evolution. It's rare and valuable. Later that evening, as I prepared to leave the office, I stopped to look at a framed photo on my wall. Our original team of 5 people in that small West Loop office where Thomson Strategic Marketing began. From that modest starting point, we had built something that was changing our industry's approach to business. The true legacy of that moment with Marcus wasn't just a successful company. It was proof that when faced with injustice, we have more options than just accepting it or seeking revenge. We can create alternatives, new models that demonstrate better ways forward. As I switched off the light, I reflected on the journey from employee to entrepreneur to industry leader. Each phase had brought new challenges, but the guiding principle remained constant: refuse false choices. Reject the idea that success requires compromise of values. Insist that there is always a better path for those willing to create it. That principle, born in a moment of betrayal, had built something far more significant than I could have imagined. Not just a company, but a movement toward a more ethical approach to business. A living demonstration that the highest success comes not from exploitation, but from alignment of interests. Not from short-term thinking, but from sustainable relationships built on trust. The story that began with a boss cutting my commission had evolved into something much larger than personal vindication. It has become a blueprint for transformation, proof that even entrenched industries can change when enough people reject the status quo and demonstrate viable alternatives. And that, I realized as I headed home, was the most valuable commission of all. 15 years after walking away from Reed Marketing, I found myself standing on the balcony of our Chicago headquarters, watching the sunset paint the skyline in shades of gold and crimson. Vega Thompson Partners had exceeded even our most optimistic projections, growing to over 800 employees across 12 global offices. We'd become the largest independent marketing group in the country while maintaining the principles that had guided us from the beginning. The industry had taken notice. Our approach, integrating cutting-edge technology with human-centered creativity, all built on a foundation of ethical business practices, had influenced how marketing agencies worldwide operated. Competitors had begun adopting elements of our model, from compensation structures that rewarded collaboration to transparent client relationships that rejected the hidden margins common in traditional agency billing. "There you are," Elizabeth said, joining me on the balcony. Though technically co-CEO with me, she had been gradually transitioning toward retirement over the past year. Hiding from your own party? Below us, the company's 15th anniversary celebration was in full swing. Employees from all our offices had gathered to commemorate the milestone. "Just taking a moment to reflect," I replied. 15 years ago, I was sitting in my apartment wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my career. She smiled. "And now?" "Now I'm wondering what comes next. We've built something remarkable, but the landscape keeps changing. AI is transforming creative processes. Client expectations continue to evolve. The talent market is more competitive than ever." "Those sound like challenges for younger leadership," Elizabeth observed. "You've been thinking about your own transition, haven't you?" I nodded. Since the merger 5 years ago, we'd been deliberate about developing the next generation of leaders. Promising talent from both Thompson and Vega had been mentored, challenged with increasing responsibility, and given opportunities to shape the company's direction. "The succession plan is solid," I said. "Jessica Chen from our creative division and Ryan Martinez from strategy are ready. They understand our values at a bone-deep level, but bring fresh perspectives we need for the next evolution. So what's holding you back?" It was a perceptive question. Despite our careful planning, I'd been reluctant to finalize my exit date. Elizabeth had already announced hers. In 6 months, she would step down as co-CEO, transitioning to an advisory board role. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Maybe I'm afraid that without the founders present, the culture will drift back toward industry norms. That profit will gradually take precedence over principles." "Ah, the founder's dilemma," Elizabeth nodded. "Believing you're the only one who can truly protect the vision." Her gentle critique stung because it contained truth. Despite all my talk about shared leadership and distributed decision-making, I still harbored the belief that the company needed me as its ethical compass. "You've spent 15 years proving that business can operate differently," Elizabeth continued. "But the ultimate? Test isn't whether it works while you're at the helm. It's whether you've built something that sustains those values beyond your direct involvement. She was right again. The true measure of what we'd created wasn't its current success, but its ability to maintain its core principles through leadership transitions and market evolutions. Besides, she added with a smile, it's not as if you'd be disappearing. The succession plan has you moving to a board role like me, still involved, just not in day-to-day operations. We rejoined the celebration downstairs, where I found myself drawn into conversations with employees from across our global offices. I was struck by how consistently they articulated our shared values, regardless of their role or location. The principles that had begun as my personal response to Marcus's betrayal had truly become embedded in the organization's DNA. Later that evening, as the party wound down, Jesse approached me with a woman I didn't recognize. "Blake, there's someone you should meet," he said. "This is Sophia Reed," the last name registered immediately. "Reed, as in Marcus Reed's daughter," she confirmed. Though I don't use that connection professionally. I was momentarily speechless. I knew Marcus had children, but our paths had never crossed. "Sophia recently joined our Atlanta office as a senior strategist," Jesse explained. "She specifically requested a transfer to Chicago for the anniversary event because she wanted to meet you." "I hope that's not too awkward," Sophia said. "I understand you and my father have history. Ancient history," I assured her. "Please, join me for a coffee." We found a quiet corner away from the remaining partygoers. Sophia was poised and articulate, clearly comfortable in her own skin despite the potentially awkward situation. "I've followed your career for years," she began. "Your keynote at the National Marketing Association conference 3 years ago was what inspired me to switch from consulting to agency work." "I'm flattered," I said, "but I'm curious. Given the history between your father and me, why choose Vega Thompson?" She took a moment before answering. "My father and I have a complicated relationship. He was not always the best role model in business ethics." She smiled wryly. "Actually, your story was well known in our household, though from a very different perspective than how you might tell it." "I can imagine," I said, wondering how Marcus had framed the Horizon situation to his family. As I built my own career, I saw similar patterns in the agencies I worked with. Promises made to clients that were never intended to be kept. Junior staff exploited their ideas without proper credit or compensation. Commissions and bonuses manipulated to benefit management at employees' expense. She leaned forward. "But Vega Thompson has a different reputation." I wanted to experience that firsthand, to see if a marketing organization could actually operate with the kind of integrity I'd given up hoping for. Her candor was refreshing. "And what have you found in your time with us?" "That the reputation is largely deserved, though no organization is perfect. There's genuine commitment here to treating people fairly, to honoring commitments, to rejecting the cynical aspects of our industry." Our conversation continued for nearly an hour. Sophia was insightful about the agency's strengths and weaknesses, offering perspectives I hadn't considered. She had clearly thought deeply about organizational ethics and had practical ideas for strengthening our approach further. "Have you spoken with your father recently?" I finally asked. "Not for several years," she replied, her expression clouding. "After the collapse of his last venture, he moved to Florida. He's not in good health." I nodded, unsure how to respond. My feelings about Marcus remained complicated. Gratitude for the inadvertent push that led to Thompson's creation, mixed with lingering resentment over his betrayal. "I should probably tell you," Sophia continued, "that I didn't just join Vega Thompson for its ethical reputation. I also came because I wanted to be part of rewriting my family's business legacy, to demonstrate that a Reed could operate with integrity in this industry." Her words struck me profoundly. In that moment, I saw the true scope of how actions ripple outward across time and relationships. How Marcus's choice 15 years ago had not only altered my trajectory, but had influenced his daughters as well, motivating her to create a different kind of professional identity. The next morning, I called an unexpected meeting with our succession planning committee. The conversation with Sophia had crystallized something I'd been wrestling with for months. "I'm ready to announce my transition date," I told the group. 6 months from now, in alignment with Elizabeth's departure, Jessica and Ryan will assume co-CEO roles, with Elizabeth and me moving to the board. Tanya, who had been involved in every major company decision since day one, studied my face. "What changed? Last week you were still hesitant about the timeline." I realized I was holding on for the wrong reasons, I explained. "I've been treating our values as something fragile that needed my personal protection. But they're not fragile anymore. They're woven into how we operate, how we hire, how we measure success. The best way to preserve those values isn't by maintaining founder control indefinitely. It's by entrusting them to the next generation of leadership." The announcement to the company later that week was met with a mixture of emotions: appreciation for the thoughtful transition plan, excitement about the new leadership, and some natural anxiety about change. Jessica and Ryan handled the moment beautifully, honoring the company's heritage while articulating their vision for its evolution. In the months that followed, I focused on 2 priorities: ensuring a smooth leadership transition and capturing the company's history and guiding principles in a form that could inform future decisions. This latter project evolved into a book, part company history, part marketing philosophy, part ethical framework, titled Beyond False Choices: Building Business on Uncompromised Values. The book became more than just a personal project. It transformed into a collaborative effort that engaged people throughout the organization. Veterans shared stories of pivotal moments when our principles had been tested. Newer team members offered fresh perspectives on how our approach contrasted with their previous workplaces. Clients contributed testimonials about the impact of our ethical stance on their businesses. As the manuscript took shape, it became clear that the story was much larger than my personal journey. It was the chronicle of a community that had coalesced around a shared vision of what business could be. During this period, Horizon Innovations, still our client after 15 years, approached us with their most ambitious project yet: a complete reimagining of their brand for a new era. Vanessa Blackwell, now their chief brand officer, insisted that I remain personally involved despite my impending transition. "You've been with us from the beginning," she said during our initial planning session. "You understand our DNA in a way no one else does." The project became a perfect capstone to my operational career, a chance to apply everything we'd learned about integrating data-driven insights with authentic storytelling, all while maintaining the ethical standards that had defined our relationship from day one. It was during the final presentation to Horizon's executive team that I received an unexpected email from Sophia Reed. "I've been thinking about our conversation at the anniversary event. There's something I'd like to discuss with you, if you're willing. It concerns my father." We met at a small cafe near our office the following day. Sophia seemed nervous, quite different from her confident demeanor during our first meeting. "My father is dying," she said without preamble. "Pancreatic cancer. The doctors give him 2 to 3 months." "I'm very sorry to hear that," I said and meant it. Despite our history, I took no pleasure in Marcus's suffering. He's been reviewing his life, as people often do near the end. "Your name has come up several times." She hesitated. "I think he regrets how he handled the Horizon situation, though he struggles to admit it directly." I waited, sensing there was more. "This may sound strange, but he's asked to speak with you. In person, if possible." I told him I'd convey the request but made no promises about your response. The request caught me completely off guard. 15 years had passed since our last interaction, that day when Marcus had come to my office seeking employment. Since then, our paths had deliberately not crossed. May I ask why? After all this time, what does he hope to accomplish? Closure, I think, Sophia replied. Though he hasn't expressed it directly. What I do know is that in his mind, your story and his are inextricably linked. The choices he made with you and Horizon represent something significant in his understanding of his own life. I took a few days to consider the request. My initial impulse was to decline. What purpose would such a meeting serve? Our business relationship had ended long ago. The company I'd built had moved far beyond its origin story. Yet something about closing this circle felt important, not for Marcus's sake, but for my own. The journey that began in his office had transformed not just my career, but my understanding of business ethics and leadership. Perhaps there was value in completing that loop. The following week, I flew to Florida. Sophia met me at the airport and drove me to a modest beachfront condo in St. Petersburg. Marcus had declined significantly since I'd last seen him 5 years earlier. Always a large, commanding presence, he now appeared diminished, his frame gaunt, his once booming voice reduced to a rasp. "Blake," he said as I entered the room. "You actually came. I wasn't sure you would." "Neither was I admitted, taking the seat opposite him. An awkward silence followed. Despite requesting the meeting, Marcus seemed at a loss for how to begin. "I've been following your success," he finally said. "Vega Thompson is quite the empire now." "It's grown beyond what I imagined possible," I acknowledged. "Sophia speaks highly of how you run things. Different from how I managed Reed Marketing, I gather." I glanced at Sophia, who had remained in the room at her father's insistence. "We've tried to build a culture that values people as much as profits." Marcus nodded slowly. "The irony isn't lost on me, you know. If I hadn't changed your commission structure after Horizon, none of it would exist. You'd likely still be working for someone else." "That's probably true," I conceded. "Though I don't think that justifies what happened." "No, it doesn't," he agreed, surprising me with his directness. "I've had a lot of time to reflect lately. The Horizon situation, I miscalculated badly. Not just in losing a valuable employee, and ultimately the client, but in what it revealed about my approach to business." He paused for breath, the effort of extended conversation clearly taxing him. "I convinced myself that changing your commission was just smart business, protecting company interests, managing costs as we scaled. But it was simple greed. I saw a big payday that you had earned, and I wanted more of it for myself." The blunt admission stunned me. This was not the Marcus Reed I remembered, the man of smooth justifications and corporate doublespeak. After Reed Marketing collapsed, I tried several other ventures. None succeeded, at least not sustainably. I kept applying the same approach, prioritizing short-term gain over long-term relationships, and kept getting the same results. "Meanwhile," he continued, gesturing weakly toward the window, beyond which lay the city where a Vega Thompson office now operated, "you built something that has lasted and grown, something with a reputation for both excellence and integrity. The contrast hasn't been lost on me." I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me had carried a vision of this moment for years, Marcus acknowledging his wrongdoing, validating my choice to leave. But the reality felt hollow, lacking the satisfaction I'd imagined. "Why did you want to see me, Marcus?" I finally asked. "After all this time?" He considered the question carefully. "Not forgiveness, I don't expect that. Not even understanding." He glanced at his daughter. "Sophia encouraged me to face the consequences of my choices directly, to acknowledge the harm I caused rather than continue justifying it, even if only to myself. But there's something else," he added. "I wanted you to know that your response to what I did, choosing to build something better rather than simply seeking revenge or advancement within the same broken system, had an impact beyond what you intended. It changed how at least one person, me, understands what's possible in business. The conversation continued for another hour. We discussed the evolution of the marketing industry, the challenges of leadership, the legacies we hope to leave. Marcus spoke of his regrets, not just about our situation, but about the pattern of choices throughout his career that had prioritized immediate gain over lasting relationships. My biggest failure wasn't losing Horizon or watching Reed marketing collapse, he reflected. It was never understanding what actually creates sustainable success. I always saw business as a zero-sum game. For me to win, someone else had to lose. You proved there was another way. There was no dramatic reconciliation or emotional catharsis, just two professionals reflecting on interconnected journeys from opposite ends of an ethical spectrum. As I prepared to leave, Marcus reached for a folder on his bedside table. "I'd like you to have this," he said, handing it to me. "It might not mean much to you, but it would mean something to me if you accepted it." Inside was a faded newspaper clipping, a profile of Thomson's strategic marketing from our third year of operation, highlighting our rapid growth and distinctive approach to client relationships. "I kept this," Marcus explained. "At first, I thought it was a reminder of what I'd lost through my own poor judgment. Later, it became something different, evidence that there were alternatives to the way I'd always operated." I thanked him, genuinely touched by the gesture despite our complicated history. As Sophia drove me back to the airport, she thanked me for coming. "That couldn't have been easy for either of you." "Actually, it was easier than I expected," I replied. 15 years is a long time. The anger that drove me initially has long since transformed into something more constructive. "Into Vega Thompson," she suggested. "Yes, but also into a different understanding of success. Meeting with your father reminded me how easily we can justify compromising our values in pursuit of short-term gains. How we can convince ourselves that business realities require choices that, in retrospect, were simply failures of imagination or courage." She nodded thoughtfully. "That perspective is why I wanted to work for your company. It's rare to find organizations that consistently reject that false framing." 6 weeks later, I received word that Marcus had passed away. The funeral was small, attended primarily by family. I sent flowers but didn't attend, feeling my presence might distract from the family's grieving process. A week after the service, Sophia returned to work at our Chicago office. She stopped by my office her first day back. "Thank you for the flowers," she said, "and for meeting with him before he died. It meant a lot to him." "I'm glad we had that conversation," I replied honestly. "How are you holding up?" "Processing," she said. "It's complicated grief when I love someone but disagree fundamentally with many of their choices." She hesitated. "He left something for you in his will. A letter. I have it here." She handed me a sealed envelope. I didn't open it until after she left. Inside was a single page in Marcus's handwriting, clearly composed with great effort given. His condition. "Blake. Our paths crossed at a pivotal moment for both of us. My choice, driven by short-term thinking and greed, caused harm that I regretted too late to repair. Your response, choosing to build rather than destroy, created something remarkable that will outlast both of us. I've spent years watching your success from a distance, initially with resentment, later with a grudging respect, and finally with genuine admiration. You've proven that the cynicism I embraced as business reality was merely a failure of vision and character. I won't ask for forgiveness. Some debts can't be repaid. But I wanted you to know that your example influenced me profoundly, though too late to change my own course. Through Sophia, perhaps, the Reed name might be associated with something better than what I built and lost. My hope is that the principles you've championed continue to spread through our industry. There are too many Marcus Reeds out there, justifying exploitation as necessary for success. Your company stands as living proof of a better alternative. Thank you for the courtesy of our final conversation. It provided a closure I didn't deserve but deeply needed. Marcus. I sat with the letter for a long time, reflecting on the strange symmetry of our interconnected stories. What had begun as a simple business betrayal had evolved into something far more complex. A multi-decade dialogue about values, choices, and their long-term consequences. Back in Chicago, with my formal leadership transition just weeks away, I incorporated this unexpected coda into the final chapter of my book manuscript. The meeting with Marcus, and now his letter, had added an unexpected dimension to the conclusion, a reflection on how ethical choices ripple outward in ways we can't anticipate, influencing not just immediate outcomes, but the broader understanding of what's possible in business. My book, Beyond False Choices, was released just 1 month before my official transition from co-CEO to board chairman. The timing couldn't have been better, a capstone to my operational leadership and a framework for the next chapter of both my career and the company's evolution. The book's reception exceeded all expectations. What I'd envisioned as primarily an internal document for Vega Thompson employees and clients struck a much broader chord. Business schools began assigning it in ethics and leadership courses. Other agencies, including some of our competitors, used it for management training. Feature articles appeared in major business publications, exploring how our approach challenged industry conventions. Most gratifying were the messages from young professionals early in their careers, many facing ethical dilemmas similar to what I had encountered with Marcus. They wrote about how the book had given them courage to make difficult choices, to refuse compromises that violated their principles, to envision alternative paths forward. On my final day as co-CEO, the company gathered for a more intimate celebration than the anniversary event. Jessica and Ryan, our incoming co-CEOs, presented me with a custom-bound edition of Beyond False Choices, signed by every employee. Your story didn't end when you left Reed Marketing, Jessica said during the presentation. It was just beginning, and our story as a company is just one chapter in a larger narrative about transforming how business can operate. Ryan nodded in agreement. The principles you established aren't just rules to follow. They're a framework for making decisions, in new contexts, for addressing challenges we can't even anticipate today. As I looked around at the faces of people who had joined our journey at different points, some who had been with me since the original 5-person team, others who had come aboard just months ago, I felt a profound sense of completion. The values that had once been my personal response to betrayal had become something far larger, a living demonstration that business could operate differently, that integrity and success could reinforce rather than oppose each other. When I left Reed Marketing 15 years ago, I told the group, I was driven primarily by what I was leaving behind, a situation I couldn't accept, a compromise I refused to make. But somewhere along the way, that negative motivation transformed into something positive, a vision of what marketing could be at its best. Not just effective, but ethical. Not just profitable, but purposeful. I raised my glass. To Vega Thompson partners, past, present, and future. May you continue to reject false choices and find the better path forward. As the celebration continued around me, I found myself in conversation with Vanessa from Horizon, still our client after all these years despite countless attempts by competitors to win their business. 15 years, she marveled. From that first conversation at the charity gala to now, did you ever imagine this is where that path would lead? Not remotely, I admitted. I was just trying to do good work for a client I respected, then trying to stand up for what I'd earned, then trying to build something that aligned with my values. Each step was just a response to the moment, not part of some grand plan. Sometimes, that's how the most important journeys unfold, she replied. Not through careful planning, but through consistent choices guided by clear principles. Her observation resonated deeply. Looking back, the most significant decisions in building Thomson's strategic marketing hadn't been elaborate strategic maneuvers, but relatively straightforward choices to honor commitments, treat people fairly, and refuse false dichotomies between profit and ethics. In the weeks following my transition to board chairman, I found myself with something I hadn't experienced in 15 years, unstructured time. While I maintained regular contact with Jessica and Ryan, offering guidance when requested, they were leading the company capably, bringing fresh energy and ideas while maintaining the core values we'd established. I began accepting speaking engagements at business schools and industry conferences, sharing the Vega Thompson story not as a prescription, but as a possibility, an example of how business could be conducted differently than conventional wisdom suggested. During a Q&A session following one such talk, a young marketing professional asked a question that cut to the heart of the matter. Your company succeeded in part because clients valued your ethical approach. But what about industries or markets where clients don't seem to care about ethics, where they just want results at any cost? Can your model work there? It was a fair question, and one I'd wrestled with myself. The assumption behind your question, I replied, is that ethics and results are separable, that you can choose one or the other. But our experience suggests something different, that ethical practices actually drive better long-term results. We attracted clients not just because they admired our values, but because those values translated into more effective work. Transparency builds trust. Fair treatment of employees reduced turnover and preserved institutional knowledge. Honest billing eliminates the adversarial dynamics that plague many agency-client relationships. So to answer your question directly, yes, I believe this model can work in any industry. Not because all clients prioritize ethics explicitly, but because ethical practices create competitive advantages that benefit both the business and its customers. As I reflected on the full circle of the journey, from account manager to agency founder to industry leader to now board member and author, each role building on the last, each informed by that pivotal moment when I'd refused to accept Marcus's terms, I recognized how profoundly that single decision had shaped everything that followed. Some might see the story as one of revenge served cold. The employee who was wronged building a more successful company than his former boss. But I had come to understand it differently. This wasn't a story about getting even, it was about getting it right. About demonstrating that business could operate according to higher standards than commonly practiced, that sustainable success came from alignment of interests rather than exploitation. Marcus had inadvertently given me the push I needed to discover this path. And now, in a fitting symmetry, his daughter had joined the organization that emerged from that moment, committed to carrying these principles forward into a new generation. During a board meeting 6 months into my new role, Jessica and Ryan presented their vision for the company's next chapter, an ambitious plan to expand our educational initiatives, sharing our approach with the broader industry through workshops, publications, and partnerships with business schools. We've proven this model works internally, Ryan explained. Now we have an opportunity, maybe even a responsibility, to help others implement similar approaches. The goal isn't to make every agency operate exactly like Vega Thompson, Jessica added. It's to demonstrate that there are viable alternatives to exploitative business practices, that companies can thrive while treating people fairly. As they outlined their vision, I felt a profound sense of continuity. What had begun as my personal response to Marcus's betrayal had evolved into an organizational philosophy, which was now expanding into an educational mission that could influence the broader business landscape. When they finished their presentation, Elizabeth, now, like me, serving as a board member rather than CEO, smiled knowingly in my direction. From one man's principled stand to an industry-wide movement, she said quietly. Not a bad return on that decision 15 years ago. As I prepared to vote on the proposal, I thought about Marcus's letter, tucked away in my desk at home. About Sophia carrying forward a different version of the Reed legacy through her work with us. About Vanessa and Horizon, still our partners after all these years. About the thousands of employees and clients who had become part of this story along the way. The betrayal that had launched this journey had been transformed through time and collective effort into something I never could have imagined that day in Marcus's office. Not just a successful company, but a different model for how business could be conducted. A living proof that the highest success comes not from exploitation, but from integrity. Not from short-term thinking, but from sustainable relationships built on trust. And that realization, that transformation of a personal setback into a positive force for change, was the most valuable commission of all. Tanya, who had been involved in every major company decision since day one, studied my face. What changed? Last week you were still hesitant about the timeline. I realized I was holding on for the wrong reasons, I explained. I've been treating our values as something fragile that needed my personal protection. But they're not fragile anymore. They're woven into how we operate, how we hire, how we measure success. The best way to preserve those values isn't by maintaining founder control indefinitely, it's by entrusting them to the next generation of leadership. The announcement to the company later that week was met with a mixture of emotions: appreciation for the thoughtful transition plan, excitement about the new leadership, and some natural anxiety about change. Jessica and Ryan handled the moment beautifully, honoring the company's heritage while articulating their vision for its evolution. In the months that followed, I focused on two priorities: ensuring a smooth leadership transition and capturing the company's history and guiding principles in a form that could inform future decisions. This latter project evolved into a book, part company history, part marketing philosophy, part ethical framework, titled Beyond False Choices: Building Business on Uncompromised Values. The book became more than just a personal project. It transformed into a collaborative effort that engaged people throughout the organization. Veterans shared stories of pivotal moments when our principles had been tested. Newer team members offered fresh perspectives on how our approach contrasted with their previous workplaces. Clients contributed testimonials about the impact of our ethical stance on their businesses. As the manuscript took shape, it became clear that the story was much larger than my personal journey. It was the chronicle of a community that had coalesced around a shared vision of what business could be. During this period, Horizon Innovations, still our client after 15 years, approached us with their most ambitious project yet: a complete reimagining of their brand for a new era. Vanessa Blackwell, now their chief brand officer, insisted that I remain personally involved despite my impending transition. "You've been with us from the beginning," she said during our initial planning session. "You understand our DNA in a way no one else does." The project became a perfect capstone to my operational career, a chance to apply everything we'd learned about integrating data-driven insights with authentic storytelling, all while maintaining the ethical standards that had defined our relationship. From day one, it was during the final presentation to Horizon's executive team that I received an unexpected email from Sophia Reed. "I've been thinking about our conversation at the anniversary event. There's something I'd like to discuss with you, if you're willing. It concerns my father." We met at a small cafe near our office the following day. Sophia seemed nervous, quite different from her confident demeanor during our first meeting. "My father is dying," she said without preamble. "Pancreatic cancer. The doctors give him 2 to 3 months." "I'm very sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. Despite our history, I took no pleasure in Marcus's suffering. He's been reviewing his life, as people often do near the end. "Your name has come up several times." She hesitated. "I think he regrets how he handled the Horizon situation, though he struggles to admit it directly." I waited, sensing there was more. "This may sound strange, but he's asked to speak with you. In person, if possible." I told him I'd convey the request but made no promises about your response. The request caught me completely off guard. 15 years had passed since our last interaction, that day when Marcus had come to my office seeking employment. Since then, our paths had deliberately not crossed. May I ask why? After all this time, what does he hope to accomplish? Closure, I think, Sophia replied, though he hasn't expressed it directly. What I do know is that in his mind, your story and his are inextricably linked. The choices he made with you and Horizon represent something significant in his understanding of his own life. I took a few days to consider the request. My initial impulse was to decline. What purpose would such a meeting serve? Our business relationship had ended long ago. The company I'd built had moved far beyond its origin story. Yet something about closing this circle felt important, not for Marcus's sake, but for my own. The journey that began in his office had transformed not just my career, but my understanding of business ethics and leadership. Perhaps there was value in completing that loop. The following week, I flew to Florida. Sophia met me at the airport and drove me to a modest beachfront condo in St. Petersburg. Marcus had declined significantly since I'd last seen him 5 years earlier. Always a large, commanding presence, he now appeared diminished, his frame gaunt, his once booming voice reduced to a rasp. "Blake," he said as I entered the room. "You actually came. I wasn't sure you would." "Neither was I admitted, taking the seat opposite him. An awkward silence followed. Despite requesting the meeting, Marcus seemed at a loss for how to begin. "I've been following your success," he finally said. "Vega Thompson is quite the empire now." "It's grown beyond what I imagined possible," I acknowledged. "Sophia speaks highly of how you run things. Different from how I managed Reed Marketing, I gather." I glanced at Sophia, who had remained in the room at her father's insistence. "We've tried to build a culture that values people as much as profits." Marcus nodded slowly. "The irony isn't lost on me, you know. If I hadn't changed your commission structure after Horizon, none of it would exist. You'd likely still be working for someone else." "That's probably true," I conceded, "though I don't think that justifies what happened." "No, it doesn't," he agreed, surprising me with his directness. "I've had a lot of time to reflect lately. The Horizon situation. I miscalculated badly, not just in losing a valuable employee, and ultimately the client, but in what it revealed about my approach to business." He paused for breath, the effort of extended conversation clearly taxing him. "I convinced myself that changing your commission was just smart business, protecting company interests, managing costs as we scaled. But it was simple greed. I saw a big payday that you had earned, and I wanted more of it for myself." The blunt admission stunned me. This was not the Marcus Reed I remembered, the man of smooth justifications and corporate doublespeak. After Reed Marketing collapsed, I tried several other ventures. None succeeded, at least not sustainably. I kept applying the same approach, prioritizing short-term gain over long-term relationships, and kept getting the same results. "Meanwhile," he continued, gesturing weakly toward the window, beyond which lay the city where a Vega Thompson office now operated, "you built something that has lasted and grown, something with a reputation for both excellence and integrity." The contrast hasn't been lost on me. I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me had carried a vision of this moment for years. Marcus acknowledging his wrongdoing, validating my choice to leave. But the reality felt hollow, lacking the satisfaction I'd imagined. "Why did you want to see me, Marcus?" I finally asked. "After all this time?" He considered the question carefully. "Not forgiveness. I don't expect that. Not even understanding." He glanced at his daughter. "Sophia encouraged me to face the consequences of my choices directly, to acknowledge the harm I caused rather than continue justifying it, even if only to myself. But there's something else," he added. I wanted you to know that your response to what I did, choosing to build something better rather than simply seeking revenge or advancement within the same broken system, had an impact beyond what you intended. It changed how at least one person, me, understands what's possible in business. The conversation continued for another hour. We discussed the evolution of the marketing industry, the challenges of leadership, the legacies we hoped to leave. Marcus spoke of his regrets, not just about our situation, but about the pattern of choices throughout his career that had prioritized immediate gain over lasting relationships. My biggest failure wasn't losing Horizon or watching Reed Marketing. Collapse, he reflected. It was never understanding what actually creates sustainable success. I always saw business as a zero-sum game. For me to win, someone else had to lose. You proved there was another way. There was no dramatic reconciliation or emotional catharsis, just two professionals reflecting on interconnected journeys from opposite ends of an ethical spectrum. As I prepared to leave, Marcus reached for a folder on his bedside table. I'd like you to have this, he said, handing it to me. It might not mean much to you, but it would mean something to me if you accepted it. Inside was a faded newspaper, clipping, a profile of Thomson Strategic Marketing from our third year of operation, highlighting our rapid growth and distinctive approach to client relationships. I kept this, Marcus explained. At first, I thought it was a reminder of what I'd lost through my own poor judgment. Later, it became something different. Evidence that there were alternatives to the way I'd always operated. I thanked him, genuinely touched by the gesture despite our complicated history. As Sophia drove me back to the airport, she thanked me for coming. That couldn't have been easy for either of you. Actually, it was easier than I expected, I replied. 15. Years is a long time. The anger that drove me initially has long since transformed into something more constructive. Into Vega Thompson, she suggested. Yes, but also into a different understanding of success. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready. For you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.